Good morning, everybody. This is Alex St. John, aka The Saint, streaming to you live from the Playcast Dungeon. It is, what is it? I got an early start. I went to bed at 9 and woke up at 10 a.m. It's now 4:51 a.m. I've been working on a matrix algebra problem all night. I think I've almost got it cracked, but usually when I'm coding all night out here in the Playcast barn, I'm running YouTube in the background to keep me company, and everyone, usually YouTube's really eager to present me with, a scientist found a mysterious rock, couldn't explain it, and therefore we made an aliens documentary about it, which, are easy to dismiss, and you go, oh, maybe that's entertaining nonsense, but any reasonable person seeing that crap knows it's bullshit, right? Right? But then you see the stuff where you go, huh? Oh, that seems like it's bullshit, but it's really well packaged bullshit. And these guys are telling a hell of a fairy tale. Do I believe it? And so this video came up. I'm not this one here. Wait, let me pull it up here. This is, let me see, oh yeah. So it's this article, these colossal de-extinction guys are all over the news, and YouTube keeps telling me, you got to pay attention to Colossal's de-extinction website. Because these guys are raising millions of dollars on the story that they're going to bring back extinct mammoths and dodos. They're going to buy cloning technology. So one of the things is, I got into computer science and artificial intelligence because I wanted to do computational biology when I was a kid. That's why I studied physics and all the math. But you also have to learn genetics and biology to do that stuff. And so I spent a lot of years studying genetics and biology and trying to model it with computers before I realized our computers just can't do that. And maybe I'll live long enough to see the computers that can. But that doesn't stop people from pretending they can and raising money. And these guys are making some pretty extraordinary claims. And I love science fiction. I love a good story, I'd love to go, yes, it would be cool to colonize Mars if anybody really had a good reason to, because it's a barren, uninhabitable, lifeless rock. But when you hear somebody going, and I'm a big Elon Musk fan, don't get me wrong, I love the vision. But when you hear somebody going, the reason I'm building this space program is because the end goal is to colonize Mars, you kind of go, don't get me wrong, I love the idea, love the rockets and stuff, awesome. But why don't you colonize Antarctica first? Wouldn't that be cheaper to try? Before we before we packing people up and sending them across the solar system to die on Mars, why don't we put them on just a cargo ship and just maroon them on Antarctica for 20 years and see who lives? What if we just said, let's go build a habitat where we drop them off in Antarctica with just fly over, parachute them in, and leave them for 20 years and then see who's still alive? What if we did that before we, built entire space programs and sent people to Mars? If you're just, trying to be sort of cost effective about your approach, isn't the rocket thing kind of the cheap, easy part, and the not killing everybody by marooning them on a barren desert planet maybe the better starting point? So just from a sort of critical thinking skill, you go, look, maybe you're all smarter than I am, maybe, right? You're certainly richer, okay, and there's lots of money, it's really popular, but if you just said but if the end goal is to inhabit an abandoned rock in space, if that was the goal, wouldn't you start with something other than making rockets? Like, can you survive there just like by building a dome in Antarctica and leaving it for 20 years? And hey, who wants to volunteer to go, stay in that for 20 years and no oxygen and no supplies and definitely, and the other thing is you can get media out there, but there has to be an 8-minute buffer delay on all signals coming from Earth. So I would think that would be, for 1% of the cost, the huge achievement in human evolution is, can we just survive on an inhospitable part of our own planet before we, make a rocket and fire us to an even more inhospitable planet? Right, just saying, right? Critical thinking. Just saying, like I did with the fusion guys, right? I love fusion. It's a great idea. I worked on the ITER fusion reactor. and saw some of the problems. I hope we figure it out. It's amazing stuff. And then you got, you know, these really kooky, heavily funded claims that we're just building fusion power generators in Virginia just next week, when we don't have that technology yet. It hasn't been invented, and people should know that before they, you know. But I mean, makes good news clickbait, I guess. So you got this de-extinction guys talking about resurrecting mammoths and dodos. And here's the CEO from a couple of years ago. Let me find the video of him doing this. Let me see here, because it's pretty, you know. And it's funny, is given that it was a couple of years ago. Let me see. It's a colossal, and then dodo. I think that was there. Here we go. I mistyped that. Okay, so let's see. Where's that news interview with the founder I found that was so sketch? And they learned, boy, that didn't go well, so they upgraded their interview game. Oh, of course, thank you, YouTube. Now you can't find it. Well, so they have an interview with the CEO from a year ago where they're going, well, you know, the newscaster is, you know, reasonably quite skeptical about it all. And let me see. Oh, here, can it? Oh, yeah, no, well, that's a different video. It was quite skeptical about it, and the guy's like, well, we raised $30 million with this useful thing. And the news reporter's like, well, what was the useful thing? Well, we raised $30 million, but we embrace criticism, and we think it's, you know, our skeptics and critics are really go, yeah, but just say the thing that you did. What problem did you solve? And all he does is talk about the money he's raised and not answer the question. We made something valuable that was worth $30 million, but I can't say on national TV what it did. But feel free to criticize us, because we welcome that. Right? So then that was a year ago. A year later, they're producing videos like this. So they took all that feedback and put it into making an even better sounding scam. So watch this video. This is great stuff. Look at this.
Hello. So I'm an evolutionary biologist and a recovering academic.
I have a PhD.
Until 3 months ago, I was a professor at UC Santa Cruz, where I'm standing there beneath a blue whale at our blue whale skeleton at our southern. At
Not
our,
enough research dollars there, but scamming
I ran a lab
investors.
for the last 20 years where we were innovating and revolutionizing a field called ancient DNA. We'd travel out to cold places in the world and collect the remains of things like mammoths and mastodons and giant bears and woolly rhinos and extract their DNA. The goal of my research was to use that DNA to understand how species and communities and ecosystems evolve and change, with the goal to use the past as a kind of completed evolutionary experiment to make more informed decisions about how to protect living species by understanding what makes certain species more.
So this is a little change in their narrative, right? A year ago, we're just raising lots of money to resurrect mammoths and dodos for some reason. That'll benefit humankind. But after a lot of feedback, you go, that's a stupid way to go about it. Why don't you start by just resurrecting, you know, a dead human? Now, maybe somebody who hasn't been extinct for 200 years. What if they've just been extinct for like 5 minutes on a table at a hospital? What if you just resurrected that first as a start for helping human medicine? And then, you know, and again, we're all experts at genetics here, blah, blah, blah. You go, okay, good, just resurrect, you know, a living cat. Just de-extinct a cat that's not dead yet. Because we know that's possible. We've got records of, we got about a dozen different animal species. We know we've been able to clone successfully. And we've got some extinct species we were not able to clone successfully. None of those efforts succeeded. I'm not saying they can't. But, you know, you just build your credibility by doing sort of maybe the thing we already know we can do. But no, it's got to be a dodo. And the rationale for this is still absurd, but you can see they've had a year to refine the scam. So this pitch is starting with, oh, we hire the young guy who doesn't answer what the technology is but raise the money. He didn't do so well on television. So we're going to get a PhD who's a real good bullshitter, because then you can't criticize her because she's going to wave that PhD at you. But she's still going to say some absurd shit on stage. Watch this.
More robust than others. But when you extract DNA from million-year-old mammoths, the conversations you have about your work often tend to go in a slightly different direction. And so, in 2015, I wrote this book, really laying out all of the steps that one would need to overcome. if one were to bring a mammoth or some other extinct species back to life. My goal was to lay out the technical, ethical, ecological, regulatory challenges that we would have to solve, but also to highlight how transformative this technology would be for the conservation of living endangered species. And then, about 7 years after I published this book, Ben Lamb and George Church.
Again, really weird premise, because you go, okay, so why are you resurrecting a mammoth which went extinct because the ice age ended and the places the mammoth inhabited got flooded with salt water and they died or were marooned? So there's no habitat for them anymore. Why don't you just try to resurrect something that went extinct last month? What if we did that? Just any species. Resurrect a living copy of some species we just haven't done yet because we've only, cloned like a dozen. So, how about nobody's done a chimp? No chimpanzees cloned yet. Those are like us. And they're not extinct yet. Lots more samples of that than ones you'll find in the glacier. But no, gotta go for a mammoth for some reason.
Co-founded a company called Colossal with the goal to do exactly what I had laid out in the book. And so, of course, Ben called me and said, you should join us. You wrote the playbook.
And I suck on TV news and really blew the creds, so what we need is somebody with a PhD to bullshit us.
I was a little hesitant. I joined as a consultant. I wanted to see how far they could get in pushing along this technology. And I was immediately surprised, excited, really enthusiastic by how far they've been able to get in such a short amount of time.
Because they'd cloned what? Just like an extinct rabbit that went extinct yesterday? Just what did they do?
And then a few months ago, I decided to take the jump, and I am now Colossal's Chief Scientific Officer.
Oh boy.
Colossal's goal is to make extinction a thing of the past, to use the tools of...
Start right there. So extinction was something the planet did to evolve a long time ago, to adapt to the fact that the planet's climate was always changing. Why would you want to stop extinction? What a weird premise. What a creepy premise.
Gene editing, genetic engineering, to replace missing components of ecosystems, to help these ecosystems to become more robust and resilient, given the dramatic
Dodos went extinct because we spread rats all over the tropical islands. Why don't you go get rid of the rats and the cats? Because that's why the pink pigeon you're going to mention and the dodos went extinct. You go, yeah, some people hunted them a little bit, but the reason the dodo went extinct is that Dutch and English traders spread rats all over these habitats. So, but you're not going to go, hey, we're going to go to the remote tropical island where the cute birds are going extinct and get rid of the rats. No, we're going to resurrect a species that's been dead for 150 years and has no ecosystem anymore. We're not going to go to New Zealand and say, this was a beautiful place with giant prehistoric birds and a lot of kiwis before people came here. Let's extinct the people and all that will come back. Not talking about that. No, we're going to do something stupid and illogical instead. Here we go.
Upheavals that are happening to habitats across the world today. We've launched 3 de-extinction projects: mammoth, dodo, and thylacine, which is also sometimes called the Tasmanian tiger. The choice of these 3 species is purposeful. We have a marsupial mammal, a placental mammal, and a bird. And as we develop the technologies to bring these species back to life, these technologies will have immediate application to helping species pretty much across the...
Wait, let me check something here. I can't believe my ears. It's agonizing. Have we ever cloned a bird? Mice, pigs, goats, cattle, sheep. Maybe have cloned birds, but they're just not worth merit because maybe they're easy to clone. But yeah, because mammals are kind of the holy grail of cloning. Okay. Wait, I gotta back up. I introduced her in the middle of saying something insane.
We have a marsupial mammal, a placental mammal, and a bird. And as we develop the technologies to bring these species back to life, these technologies will have immediate application to helping species pretty much across this animal diversity to survive and adapt in the...
To survive and adapt. The rats that are still there.
climates of today. Core to Colossal's mission is
maybe we should just extinct some rats and some cats. Maybe it would be easier, maybe it would cost less money to make rat extinction a thing. You know, human species have I think I read a statistic that we make 7 gallons of pesticide per person on Earth and have never successfully driven any insect species extinct on purpose. The number one cause of global death is malaria from a mosquito that no amount of pesticide we spray in Africa ever drives extinct successfully. So despite our best efforts, we have never successfully, deliberately or accidentally, driven a bug extinct.
This idea of de-extinction. And when most people think of de-extinction, one very specific image comes to mind. But this is not what we're doing.
No, that's silly. And I'm going to go, well, you would be a gullible moron if you thought Jurassic Park. No, 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 no. Of course we're not silly like that. We're going to acknowledge that's crazy to accrue credibility to the equally or more crazy shit we're going to say next.
First of all, I'm a scientist, so I have to break down the science a little bit.
Of course you do.
Dinosaurs went extinct more than 65 million years ago. The oldest DNA that we've recovered so far is somewhere between 1 and 2 million years old, but most DNA degrades away by about 10 or 20,000 years. Dinosaur fossils are rocks, and rocks don't have DNA. It is also not possible to recover DNA from mosquitoes preserved in amber. I've tried it. It doesn't work. Amber, it turns out, is a really poor environment for DNA preservation. It forms in very hot places, which encourages the speeding up of DNA decay. And also it's porous, which means that microbes can get in there and chew up the DNA really quickly, making it disappear. There's no DNA in mosquitoes and amber. There's no DNA in dinosaur fossils. Dinosaur de-extinction is not going to happen. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, well, I believe it now that she's told us. Well, that crushes my hope and dreams. Well, now give us some hope so that we can believe in you, because now that we are going to burn all our Michael Crichton books.
Sorry. But this is not the plan. The other thing that the scientists of Jurassic Park did was they took these tiny little short fragments of DNA and then they filled in the missing bits that they could get with frog DNA, which is a weird choice given that even at the time we already knew that birds are dinosaurs, right? But whatever. And then they put the dinosaurs in habitats that they were completely maladapted to, and chaos ensued. This is not what we want to do.
No.
Instead, what Colossal was doing is rebuilding extinct species for the present day. We will identify these core traits that make these animals unique and important components of their ecosystems. In some cases, we will augment these traits because ecosystems of today are different from the past. And when necessary, we will add additional evolutionary adaptations to these animals. Lots of habitats right now and species are suffering because of introduced diseases or introduced predators. And we can use the tools of genome editing to make these species resistant and resilient.
Again, the sort of, we're going to go colonize a desert rock planet like Mars, and the first step is build rockets, not survive on Mars. This is the first step, is to build a rocket to get there. But we'll just, the whole, build a dome and survive, we're not going to try that on a planet we're at that's cheaper. We'll deal, that comes last after we make the rockets for some reason, right? And you go, we've got an extinct species, and the reason they got extinct, we have diseases and predation, the climate and the environment changed. We're not going to go, hey, let's depopulate the islands of rats or start another ice age so the climate environment that the mammoths existed in comes back. No, no, no. We're going to resurrect an extinct species, except make it better and adapted for this environment for no fucking apparent reason. It's just, okay. And why? Because resurrecting dead species that have been gone for 200 years, the science to do that is somehow relevant to genetically enhancing animals that are alive now and in an environment that is current. We're not going to just go straight for that target. No, we have to be like some third order rationale for why we're resurrecting a dodo to live in an era where rats ate all its eggs on an island that's still covered with rats.
creating different species in the form of these extinct species. This is our definition of de-extinction. If we look at the Mammoth Project, for example, all we're going to do is start with something that already exists. An Asian elephant is the closest living relative of a mammoth. They shared a common ancestor about 6 million years ago. Their genomes are already 98% identical. So when we...
So woolly mammoths went extinct. Interestingly, we might say conservatively, everybody agrees 10,000 years ago, but it could have been as long as 300 years ago, interestingly, because has been reported or believed that there may have been island populations in the far north of mammoths that went extinct in more recent times, just because sea level rise swamped the available, they were marooned on small islands, and sea level rise isolated, increased the salinity of the water until they just went extinct from lack of fresh water. And that could have happened in very recent times, right? But so we're going to fix that because nature didn't solve the problem by making modern elephants. No, we know better. It's just an idiotic premise. But also, remember they said that mammoths diverged from elephants 6 million years ago. But they kind of went extinct last week, relatively speaking. So you're going to do what to a 6 million year old ancestor of a modern woolly mammoth to bring it back? Here we go.
We have an Asian elephant cell growing in a dish in a lab. We already have 98% of a mammoth. We just have to engineer the remaining 2%. So how do we do that? This is a bit of an oversimplification.
We just have to engineer the remaining 2%. Human DNA is like 3 miles long, right? So we just, we're just missing 1% of that, which is, what is that? Just a few hundred feet of DNA. Just that's it. And we're gonna go get that from a dead mammoth. However, we got to tell you, how do you get and sequence dead mammoth DNA? Let's see if she tells us. I'll tell you if she doesn't tell us.
Pretty good for a walkthrough. We go out into the field, my sites in Siberia, Alaska, Yukon. We collect mammoth DNA. We've done this already. We have hundreds of mammoth genomes. We can line them up on a computer next to each other, collect a bunch of Asian elephant genomes, line them up against the mammoth genomes, and identify where they are different from each other.
Oh boy. Right. You know what you can't line up is the epigenetic material that bound those genomes together. So the problem is, yes, our genome's kind of a, blueprint's the wrong word for it, because we sort of, identical twins don't have the same fingerprints. So they don't have the same brain structure. So they evolve, we develop very differently even with identical genes. But setting that aside, the epigenetics is still a mystery area in biological research, where your DNA isn't just a 3 mile long strand that's just jammed together in a ball inside each cell in your body. It's got to be a computer. So inside that cell, when it's working, when it's computing us in parallel times trillions, it has enormous structure, and that structure is imposed by epigenetics materials that fold and unfold that DNA and sequences and expose it for transcription, fold it back up again. And so a lot of the differences between animal species, or even just a St. Bernard and a Chihuahua, aren't entirely genetic. They're actually epigenetic. And that epigenetic process that controls, say, the rate of transcription, I'm gonna expose the skull growing gene longer for a St. Bernard than I will for a Chihuahua. Those epigenetics we don't really understand, and partly the reason we don't understand them is we can't sequence them. The way we sequence DNA is we blow it up. We grab a bunch of DNA, we throw a hand grenade, we blow it into little bits, and then we use a massive computer model to try all the ways it could be put back together correctly, until we find a way to put it back together correctly that has no missing parts and no leftovers. And then we assume, with a very high level of probable accuracy, that that's the unique way that genome had to go together. So it takes an enormous amount of computation, but in order to sequence DNA, we blow it to bits. And we destroy any epigenetic history, and you can bet a dead animal that's been dead for 200 years The genome sequencing techniques blow its DNA to bits. The DNA was already blown to bits by 200 years of climate, weather, predation, and bacterial decay, and we sure as hell don't have any hint of what its epigenetic structure was like. So what she's really saying is, we're going to take some woolly mammoth DNA and a modern elephant's epigenetics and hope they're compatible. And they've been separated by 6 million years, so there's a good chance they aren't, because all other attempts to resurrect dead animals that we have recent genes, recently extinct species that we have recent cell samples from, have failed. So the old plug it into a related species thing has not worked yet. I'm not saying it couldn't. It's a hard problem. So she's kind of just, epigenetics, whatever. We don't need that. It's going to work somehow. Okay.
And yet where all of those mammoths are the same as each other. These are the portions of the mammoth genome that are important to make a mammoth look and act like a mammoth. Then we use the tools of genome editing to
The genetics plays an important role in looking and acting like a mammoth, but we'll just pretend we don't need that. Okay.
gradually tweak those Asian elephant cells growing in a dish in a lab to be more mammoth-like. Then we have our mammothized Asian elephant cells in a dish in a lab. Then we use somatic cell nuclear transfer, a process commonly known as cloning that most famously brought us Dolly the sheep, to transform those cells into an embryo. And then we implant that embryo into a surrogate maternal host. That embryo develops and...
Hang on a second. Asian elephants aren't extinct. Let me check my list of cloned animals. Never cloned an Asian elephant that isn't extinct. So step one, before you do that, what if you just clone an Asian elephant? Just not an extinct. Don't forget the woolly mammoth gene bullshit. Forget the woo. Oh my God. What if you just clone an Asian elephant? Why don't you impress us with that trick? Because other academic institutions and scientists other than you have succeeded at doing that on those species. What the hell do you know about it? You haven't cloned anything at this institution yet, let alone a woolly mammoth. But okay, but sure, just make sure that accountability is somewhere beyond your career and beyond the money you guys have raised, beyond spending it all. That's an important way to ensure that you get to spend all the money before you're held accountable for not delivering a dodo or a woolly mammoth one day.
Builds into a beautiful, wonderful little mammothized Asian elephant, and it is born, and it looks and acts like a mammoth, and it lives happily ever after. Pretty straightforward.
It's not a mammoth. And why? The climate, we're in interglacial period. All the ice sheets the mammoth lived on are gone. You don't care about putting those back. So why? But okay. Well, now hopefully we'll get an answer to why.
Forward, right? What's exciting to me about all of this, clearly this is hard. And there are a lot of hard problems that are here. But the core technologies exist for each of these steps. And as we improve on these tech...
No, they don't. You didn't clone an Asian elephant that isn't extinct yet. Why don't you, if the steps all exist, just clone the fucking living elephant? But well, we're not going to do that. We're not. We're going to skip that step for some reason.
Technologies and make them applicable to non-model organisms, things that aren't mice or fruit flies. We will develop and innovate across all sorts of disciplines that have clear application to other biological disciplines. Advances in bioinformatics that allow us to map a DNA sequence or genotype to the way an animal looks or acts, a phenotype. Advances in multiplex genome editing, or the assembly and insertion of long synthetic DNA constructs. Advances in animal reproductive biology and cloning. These all have...
What advances have you made in just animal cloning? Just that. Have you made any bird clone, any elephant clone? Which we think is possible. We have some good evidence that can probably be done, because the epigenetics are intact. That's why we think it's possible.
Application to agriculture, to livestock engineering, to animal husbandry, and to human health.
But what do we need you for? And if it has applications to human health, you know what's more valuable than resurrecting a dead and extinct bird to an environment that no longer exists for it to be a hospital? What if you just work directly on human health, where there's billions of dollars? Why not work directly on human health? Why not work directly on animal husbandry? Why do you have to justify resurrecting a mammoth as having applications for clear, massive, commercially valuable problems that everybody would understandably pay millions for? Nobody wants to die of old age, right? If you can go, hey, you know, we can de-extinct you after you pass away a day later, no problem. Why don't you just go directly for that? Because that would be accountable, and people who are pulling a scam want the accountability out there in the future.
If we just think about the mammoth team, for example, this team has already made more stably integrated edits into a cell line that is karyotypically normal and therefore capable of being cloned than any publication in the academic literature to date. A few months ago, they announced that they had generated induced pluripotent stem cells for elephants, a global first. This is important both for elephant conservation and for de-extinction. It means that we can take these induced pluripotent stem cells and transform them into all different types of tissues and organoids and use these to...
How about you just transform them into an elephant and publish that? You'll get it. Be all over the news, like Dolly the sheep. It'll be a world first. Just why are you, before you can even clone the elephant, what are you putting random genes in it for? Why? Just clone the elephant and get the Nobel Prize. Just look, you'll be all over the headlines. Why not just clone the fucking elephant? Okay, but sure, we're gonna make a hybrid elephant for some reason before we can clone any elephant ever in human history. That's not the first step. We're doing some other shit for some reason.
To test hypotheses about the edits that we're making without having to use animal models. We may even be able to grow our own elephant eggs to use for cloning.
I can't. Okay. It would be immoral to use an elephant for cloning, so we're going to simulate that on the computer. Yeah, but we're going to resurrect extinct mammoths. Don't have any moral or ethical qualms with any of that. Oh, here we go.
Another innovation that is along our path to elephant de-extinction is to eventually have an artificial womb that we can use to avoid the use of elephants as surrogate hosts. This requires developing platforms for fully exogenous embryonic development, and our teams of engineers and developmental biologists have...
Anybody read Doom? Dune, rather? Frank Herbert's Dune? The evil alien race called the Telexo that they only have a male population because they're women. They've removed their heads and turned them all into living wombs, so that's an entirely male population species that have reduced their female population to nothing but wombs on artificial life support systems. This is how it started, I think.
Been building several platforms to work with both placental and marsupial mammals. As we discover all of the cues, hormonal, physiological, environmental, that are responsible and necessary for the development of different tissue types and organs throughout the process of embryonic development, this will also have application to regenerative medicine, to personalized medicine.
Why not just go directly for it then? Why not just work on regenerative human medicine? What are you doing this for? They don't even start me with we're just going to make a womb that just hangs, organs. We'll just grow whole organs, which again, that's a very nascent study, but we're just going to go for the whole womb, suspended independently of a brain, a nervous system, or, the rest of the elephant's body, because we just assume none of that's necessary to gestating mammalian babies. That'll work fine. And the reason we're going to do this is because it'll be useful to human medicine. I can't believe
medicine. Imagine we can grow your own kidney from your own cells. And of course...
Well, why don't you just do that? Why aren't you up here going, we're going to grow a human kidney from human cells? We're working really hard on that. Why aren't you doing that? I can't.
To understanding the biology of pregnancy. Our animal operations team is already making incredible discoveries that are helping endangered species today. Collaboration with the nonprofit BioRescue, we are working to save the northern white rhino from becoming extinct. Today, only 2 northern white rhinos are alive, a mother-daughter pair, both females.
And just, I can't. There's only 2 white rhinos left, okay? And they're both female. Do you know what that means? That they have 0 samples of a northern white rhino Y chromosome. But just in case she doesn't know that, but a female white rhino has 2 X chromosomes and her daughter has 2 X chromosomes. So 1 entire rhino chromosome is already extinct. All right, please continue. What you're going to do to restore the white rhino population, given that the white rhino's entire Y chromosome is extinct now. You cannot make a boy. The Y chromosome is gone from this earth.
Obviously, this would make it difficult for northern white rhinos to reproduce.
Not
However,
a problem, though.
by isolating egg cells from these females and fertilizing them with sperm from northern white rhinos that died some 10 to 20 years ago, we created
20-year-old dead male white rhinos that died 10 to 20 years ago. Where'd the sperm come from? She said sperm. Oh, they kept it frozen. Right. So it's epigenetically intact, which is totally unlike trying to restore the sperm of a mammoth, which has been extinct and its epigenetics have completely decayed. So they have frozen male white rhino sperm they have a use for, eventually. This is artificial insemination, that's called. It's been invented before. Okay.
Embryos that are being used for embryo transfer into southern white rhinos as surrogate hosts, creating a path for northern white rhinos to reproduce even though there are no males alive today. Our conservation team is also...
That's just artificial insemination, having nothing to do with restoring an extinct species. They kept the whale rhinos in a refrigerator, there's semen in a refrigerator. So kind of nothing invented here.
Also assisting in the development of a vaccine to help save baby elephants from a virus, elephant endotheliotrophic and herpes virus, that is the leading cause of death of Asian elephants, juvenile Asian elephants in captivity and increasingly in the wild. And a few weeks ago, our partners at the Houston Zoo administered this vaccine to a baby elephant for the first time. A huge win for conservation and also for elephants in general.
What that had to do with mammoths is beyond me.
But this is not all that the tools of de-extinction can do for the conservation of living animals. A few weeks ago, I was in Mauritius, the island home.
An island inhabited by rats, dumped there or released there by Dutch and English colonists that ate, to this day, all the dodo eggs and are eating all the pigeon eggs. And Mauritius is inhabited, it's a popular tourist resort. You know who else eats the birdies? All the humans' cats. So is she going to say, let's remove all the cats, rats, and people from the island? No.
Of the extinct dodo and the critically endangered Mauritian pink pigeon, discussing what we might do using the tools of de-extinction to help save the Mauritian pink pigeon from becoming...
Make lots of them and put them back on an island inhabited by rats and cats. That's going to fix it. Makes sense.
Extinct. Pink pigeons are in trouble because they nearly went extinct and have been managed heavily since that time.
They keep them in cages so the cats can't get them and the rats can't eat their eggs. That's how they've been managed.
They are suffering from the consequences of inbreeding, the loss of genetic diversity.
They're suffering from the consequences of rats and cats being introduced into their habitat. But no, that's not an interesting problem. Can't raise billions in bullshit dollars to study that. No, no, no.
Diversity that's caused by breeding with close relatives. Where there aren't that many individuals left, you really don't have a choice. What we can do is we can use our bioinformatics tools to discover where in the pink pigeon genome these mutations that are reducing the fitness of these birds are. We can go to museum collections and sequence genomes of pink pigeons that used to be alive and then replace the parts of the genome that are making these animals less fit with the...
and put them back on a fucking island full of cats and people.
Extinct diversity that will actually help them to become more robust and healthy. This is just some of the ways that the tools of de-extinction can be applied both to resurrecting extinct diversity and extinct species, restoring missing components of ecosystems and making these ecosystems and communities more robust. It is clear that we are in the midst of a biodiversity loss and extinction crisis.
That's because this is an interglacial period. It happens on this planet about every 100,000 years. It's 3-mile deep ice all the way to Florida that melts, and the entire ecosystem changes dramatically. And we have little evidence at all that the massive extinction event caused by the Holocene transition from an ice age is any different from any previous interglacial period. We say that's the case, but this is the only ice age we're actually here to study. We don't know what we don't know about previous interglacial periods when the entire northern and southern continents were covered in miles of ice and supported completely different habitats and species of animals just vanished in a few thousand years. That had nothing to do with the massive extinction. And the planet has mass extinction events all the time. If this mass extinction hadn't occurred, human beings wouldn't be here doing so well. We've been around for millions of years. It wasn't until this particular ice age and mass extinction that we really had our chance to thrive, because thank goodness something else took out the saber-toothed tigers that used to eat us. So, mass extinction's been pretty good for us, for our species. But okay, sure, we got to stop that, and we're going to stop it by bringing back these animals to environments that no longer exist and keeping them in cages or something?
Around the world, the rate of extinction today is more than 1,000 times greater than the baseline rate of extinction in the fossil record.
That would be correct. Interglacial periods are periods of faster extinction records than normal. That was also true of the asteroid hitting the Earth and wiping out the dinosaurs. So yeah, there are usually the normal extinction rate is punctuated by abrupt extinction rates associated with major climactic change events, such as interglacial periods starting.
The huge problem that species and habitats are suffering today is that the pace of change is faster than evolution is capable of keeping up with. Ideally,
the planet recovered from the dinosaur extinction. We're all here because the dinosaurs went extinct. That worked out pretty good for us.
We could all take a step back and give the species and communities and habitats of the world the space and time that they need to catch up and adapt. But we can't.
What? We're going to pre-populate New York with wild animals, and that'll be fine. We'll just put them in Central Park. We're not going to... I do not get where she's going. You know what you could do is you let the climate warm up, and then you'll have Antarctica and Greenland as nice uninhabited new continents that have a tropical climate to put them on. That might work, I guess.
It's too late, and the human footprint is too big.
Oh.
But the tools of de-extinction...
Wait. Let's kill all the people then. Or no. Don't kill all the people. What will we do instead?
Provide hope.
Oh.
We can engineer missing diversity. We can replace missing components of ecosystems. We can
put it where? Under the people? Next to all the people? We'll just have some new ecosystems around the rats? How's this going to work?
Bring back, we can de-extinct missing phenotypes, missing interactions, even missing entire species.
Why?
Creating robust and healthy habitats. It is obvious...
Which habitat? We're going to reclamate New York City or something? What are you talking about?
Yes, to all of us, that extinction is a colossal problem. It's obvious to me...
What about just death by disease and old age? What if you just tackled something, immediate and practical?
And hopefully now to you, that the tools of de-extinction will be part of the solution.
I can't. I just can't with these people. Okay, so it's obviously some kind of crazy scam, right? And then people putting millions into it. It makes no damn sense. And again, I wouldn't mind. It'd be neat to go to a Paleolithic zoo. I love going to LA and you go to the La Brea tar pits and all the stupid animals that would follow each other into the tar pits and accumulate over tens of thousands of years. The mammoth fell in, and then the mama mammoth fell on top of the baby mammoth trying to save the baby mammoth, and then some vultures landed on it to try to eat it and got stuck in the tar, and then the hyenas, the wild hyenas and saber-toothed tigers, saw the mammoth and the vultures all struggling in the tar, and they jumped on, and then just they all go down together. I mean, that's some legendary stuff. Some things never change, I think. But yeah, okay. So just what a crazy story, and they're raising so much money, and it makes no damn sense. It's silly. I mean, it's just a weird, silly premise, right? Because they go, well, in vitro fertilization, that's solved, and if you want to clone a fucking elephant, just do it. What's the mammoth shit about? And what are you talking about saving a pigeon that's lived in a cage because its island is now covered with tourist cats and rats? Uh, Making more of the pigeons to do what? You're going to give them rat armor by genetically modifying to be armadillo pigeons? What the hell are you talking about? So just lunacy. Um, and the funny thing is, you go, okay, why is this upsetting you so much? The subject is near and dear to my heart. I'll show you why. Here's a documentary. So remember, I'm from Alaska. She said she's up getting some of her specimens from Alaska, right? Fairbanks, Alaska. It's where my parents spent their summers. We had a log cabin there. I grew up in it. And I used to, in Alaska, had long winters. So when I was a teenager, I had a friend named Owen Guthrie, who his parents were professors at the University of Alaska. They were paleozoologists. And so they had some really cool, they had a cabin, of course, there that I used to love. We'd play Dungeons and Dragons all winter at his parents' place very often. It was a very comfortable environment. And we didn't have computers or CGI back in the 70s. And so if you were trying to restore or try to figure out what various extinct Paleolithic species looked like, they modeled them in clay. So his parents, the Guthries, were incredible sculptors, and their cabin was full of these beautiful Paleolithic animal sculptures that were incredibly realistic. So just amazing cabin they had. And then they also had all these, because Alaska has populations of Paleolithic creatures still surviving up there, such as muskox. I don't know if you've ever seen a muskox before. Let me show you a muskox. But this is actual megafauna from the Paleolithic era that just survived to the modern era. It's not extinct. And these frickin' things live in Alaska, and you can go to Fairbanks and the experimental farm and pat them and feed them. And they're quite amazing creatures. They look like giant woolly guinea pigs. And I was in the 70s during the Cold War. Alaska and Canada still had populations of muskox, but the Soviet Union had eaten all of theirs. In the 50s, they ate them all. So Siberia, the entire northern continent of Siberia, muskox were extinct. And so during the heart of the Cold War, and everybody's pointing nuclear weapons at each other and threatening global mass extinction, we had various well-intentioned programs to try to collaborate and have understanding between our two civilizations. So the TV show Marlon Perkins' Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom, said, let's do a TV show about a muskox transfer from the University of Alaska to the Russians during the Cold War to repopulate Siberia with muskox that are now extinct over there because they ate them all. So my father was fluent in Russian, and he was on the show as the interpreter, translating for the Russians as they packed up all these University of Alaska bred muskox and transplanted them to northern Siberia to restore the extinct muskox population. And I remember participating in all of that as a kid. Dad was on the TV show. It was his voice translating in the background with the Russians. And so it's been 50 years since then. So Siberia has a booming extinct muskox population, right? No, not a fucking one of them. They ate them all again. They just ate them. They brought them all over, big TV show, lots of money spent. They ate all the frickin' muskox again. Siberia's muskox are still extinct in Northern Europe. Oh well. Well, it was a good idea anyway. But I got a funnier story for you. Here's why it's near and dear to me. Let me see here. Here's this, guys. Watch this. Okay, so remember I told you I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I used to hang out and play Dungeons and Dragons at my friend Owen Guthrie's house, and his parents were paleozoologists. And look what they dug up while I was playing D&D at their house.
An incredibly preserved carcass of a male steppe bison embedded in ice near the city of Fairbanks, Alaska. They named it Blue Babe, in reference to Babe the Blue Ox, the mythical companion of the American folk figure Paul Bunyan, a giant lumberjack. Thankfully, the family immediately realized that their discovery might be exceptional, so they called Dale Guthrie, a paleontologist from the University of Alaska. Guthrie and his team managed to melt a thick layer of ice and excavate the carcass, and they quickly realized that they had encountered one of the most preserved specimens of steppe bison ever found. A radiocarbon analysis of a piece of the animal's skin showed that it had died approximately 36,000 years ago. While examining several wounds on the bison's neck and back, the researchers determined that it had most likely been killed by an American lion, a subspecies of the long-extinct Ice Age lion, and the ancient ancestor of the modern African lion. This had probably occurred in winter. Extreme cold had quickly caused the dead bison to freeze, and the vultures thus couldn't destroy its remains. Over the following thousands of years, layers of ice and snow covered the carcass, and it silently waited for someone to discover it, almost completely intact. Guthrie's research team put a lot of effort into preserving the dead bison in its initial state, so that it could be permanently exhibited at the University of Alaska Museum. They even sought the help of Eirik Grankvist, the chief taxidermist for the Zoological Museum of the University of Helsinki, Finland, who used his expert taxidermy skills to completely restore the remains and prevent them from decomposing. During the process, the team even managed to extract some of the animal's blood and bone marrow.
Not just that. Took a sample of its meat, and after they were done studying it, they brought it home and we had it for dinner. So I have eaten 36,000-year-old bison stroganoff. Because, you know, you can't let good meat go to waste in Alaska. It's hard to come by. So I actually have had dinner off this bison. Yeah, welcome to, so that's my intimate connection to paleozoology, is that I had a Paleolithic bison dinner once when I was a kid.
In mid-1984, the specimen was ready to be exhibited. In order to celebrate their success, Guthrie and his team decided to do something rather unorthodox. They removed some meat from the bison's neck and used it to prepare a stew.
Yep.
According to Guthrie, the meat was tough and somewhat hard to chew, but also quite delicious.
I was at that dinner. It was myself and the Guthrie's family.
Ordinary beef. Also, since nobody experienced any nausea or digestive problems, the 36,000-year-old meat was evidently quite edible.
It's really weird seeing this story in a documentary 50 years after I did it, almost 50 years, and going, oh, they're still telling the story. Yes, I was at that dinner. So that's my connection to paleozoology. Of course, they didn't have gene sequencing back then, but I would be interested, you know, if I catch up with Owen sometime, who works at the University of Alaska now after his father, we'll find out if they saved any of Blue Babe's blood and bone marrow and preserved it for gene sequencing to this day, so that they could resurrect an extinct bison that lived there in an era when there were lions in Alaska, and restore it for no apparent reason. Because it went extinct for a reason, and so did the lions, and none of them were people. The Ice Age ended. But, you know, what do I know? So, let me see here. I got that. All right. So here's, you know, and then when you hear the founder speaking on the news a year earlier, you can see how, you know, they got called out for being a pretty bullshitty story. So they upped their game by hiring an academic to replace him as their kind of front speaker, who then bends over backwards to rationalize how resurrecting a mammoth is somehow useful for other valuable sciences we already spend a lot of time studying because they're valuable, right? And then the entire premise of de-extincting species Like, hey, the Yangtze River dolphin's only been extinct since maybe 2008. Let's resurrect that and dump it back in the polluted Chinese river that it can't survive in. No answers to that question. So it's such a silly premise. And then when you see it going on, you go, it's so silly and so pointless and such an even if the problem was worth solving, such an illogical way to go about it. And then they're raising millions of dollars from somebody. What is going on here? Who's investing in this? And are they stupid? The thing is, I don't think they are stupid. So what's it all about, right? So at the same time as I'm sitting here going, I'm so clever, I can see right through this bullshit. I don't know why other people buy it. What am I missing? Feel free to educate me, because it is baffling to watch that. I lived in New Zealand for 7 years, and it was a beautiful tropical paradise where, there would be many beautiful species of extinct bird if didn't keep cats and hadn't brought rats to the island. Oh, and in order to reduce the rat population, they figured they'd solve it. People like this figured they'd solve it. They brought stoats over from Australia. And so now the stoats ate all the rats and then eat all the birds' eggs as well. So now they have to try to exterminate the things they brought over to exterminate the rats. So, humans are brilliant at this stuff here historically. And the weird thing about it is it's a very human trait to go, we're animals, and science, if you actually believe science, you believe that we are animal species from this planet that evolved as part of this planet's environment and climate, and yes, we're very proud of our ability to make cell phones and things, but otherwise it's not obvious that there's anything really special that distinguishes from other animals, other than we like to shame ourselves about existing and having an impact on the climate we're from. So that sort of weird profitability of being the only species of animals that feels ashamed for its existence is quite a fascinating phenomenon. I would love to see somebody go and yell at all the blue-green algae for poisoning the atmosphere with oxygen, wiping out hundreds of millions of years of biological and animal diversity to make room for us. Because, of course, the Earth's atmosphere was made by algae, just wiped out every living thing that existed before, which suits us just great. Um, and you can yell at algae and you can shame it, and you just can't tax it. It doesn't feel guilty. You can't make algae recycle. You can't make it fund your weird bullshit science programs, pseudoscience companies. So, it just doesn't work on blue-green algae. But people are a little dumber than blue-green algae. They'll pay for that. They'll feel guilty about stuff they're not responsible for, and apparently they'll pay for it. So the algae's smarter, apparently. I don't know. All right. Well, it's a bit of a silly one, but I just saw it come up on YouTube, and I couldn't help myself because it's just agonizing listening to some of this. I do not understand why things like this exist, other than it's a great freaking scam and it works. Astounding, right? All right. So I'm Alex St. John, aka the Saint. It's crack of dawn here. I can go in the house and put on real clothes other than my Christmas jammies. So, I'll wear a proper shirt if I can stream during the day. Hope you're as amused and riveted by this episode or subject as I am, outraged by the BS science that goes on out there. And I'll see you next time. Take care. We'll talk about GPUs if you like next time.